Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and continuing on reviewing the Marvel materials shows on Disney Plus. You know the drill. Yes, so now we've come to part 2 of my review of Season 2 of Marvel Studios' What If? Yes. Now, for those of you that have not watched part 1 yet, well, go watch that first, because, yeah, I have already covered episodes 1, 2, and 3. Now, for part 2, obviously, now I'm covering / reviewing episodes 4, 5, and 6. Yes. So, episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Season 2 of What If. Yeah, I gotta say that, still off to a great start, and now that I've gotten into the next 3 episodes, and, coming to the middle of Season 2, because these episodes were pretty good. And I gotta say, because, it's hard to choose a favorite. I feel as though probably Episode 5 was my favorite. No hard feelings on, say, episodes 4 and 6. They weren't that bad, but yeah, I really enjoyed episode 5 a lot more, but, that's just me, but yeah. It's interesting, what goes down in the next 3 episodes in the middle of Season 2, and the fact that one of them, centers on an entirely different character, and whom would be recruited by the end of that episode, but until I get there, yeah. Not to mention, because, with what happens in one of the other episodes, something that will approach towards the end of this season. Because the same thing happened in Season 1, so yeah, expecting something else to happen, because for all 3 seasons of What If, the way that the seasons end off and when some characters come together, and of course this has to do with the Watcher when he gets involved, yeah, but just overall, episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Season 2 of What If, they were pretty good. Okay, so, now, as always, dive right into them and read the description / the story, obviously starting with episode 4, titled, What If Iron Man Crashed into the Grand Master? And of course, on Sakaar. Okay, description / the story. Tony Stark challenges the Grand Master, leading to a Grand Prix turned Demolition Derby death match. Okay, so, first off, taking place in 2012, but not exactly what we know so well that happened in the Avengers, because, keep in mind, in What If, different variants in different worlds. So, in this 2012 of New York, it does it follows exactly like what we expect, kind of, because, Thanos' army is defeated, Tony Stark launching a missile into the mothership. However, when we think that he's going to make it out of there, make his way back to Earth, he doesn't. Instead, he makes his way to Sakaar, right down smack in the middle of where the Grand Master is. And the Grand Master, obviously, once again, being played by good old Jeff Goldblum. Yep. And Tony Stark / Iron Man, once again, being voiced by Mick Wingert, if I'm pronouncing his full name right, maybe his first name, but you know me sometimes. So yeah, it's very interesting that instead of Thor, it's Tony Stark that encounters the Grand Master, and not to mention that the Grand Master is well aware of who Tony is, because time on Sakaar being different for Tony's time, where he comes from, because the Grand Master and everyone else on Sakaar heard about the epic fight on Earth in New York because of Thanos, his army, and knowing who Tony Stark is / Iron Man, and the Grand Master calling him Mr. Mojo Man. Okay, but yeah, so if it's not obvious, because knowing the Grand Master, he's not letting Tony off the hook that easily. He insists on Tony staying for the party, and the fact that just a little later, we see that there's a Grand Prix race tournament that happens in these chariots, but they're really vehicles. But to the Grand Master, they're chariots. And yeah, the interactions between Tony and the Grand Master are pretty good. And I gotta say, because those who fill in for, say, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, they do a spot-on job, trying their best to really be like those characters, like with how the actors, like what they've given to those characters. You know what I mean? Just, yeah. Especially since, What If it is, MCU. So yeah, this isn't anything like those other Marvel animated shows that we've seen, like, on Disney XD. But anyways, not to mention some funny references that Tony makes, like Korg, who, yeah, obviously appears in this episode, and Korg, who once again is voiced by Taika Waititi. Tony at one point calls Korg Mount Rushmore. That was pretty good. And a few others that he does. I know, like, as I recall, he gives the Grandmaster a certain name and such, but yeah, that's great. I love that. Of course, staying true to Tony's character, this specific Tony. Yeah. So yeah, but to speed things up some, because yeah, like the whole sequence where the tournament happens, the chariots racing, Korg being one of the racers, as well as Valkyrie. Yes, and Valkyrie, who appears, and Valkyrie, once again, being played by Tessa Thompson. So, the race happens, and at a certain point, Tony can see that this race, with these chariots, as they're called by the Grandmaster, it's out of hand, and Tony's not having a good time watching this. And then, he does something about it, summoning his Iron Man suit, and helping out Korg and such. But even when, say, the Grandmaster's champion is unleashed, which is like this elephant-like creature, but yeah, just overall, Tony manages to save Korg's life, and, Valkyrie, she's okay, of course, yeah, because, in the end, like, some of the chariots, as the Grandmaster calls them, they crash and so on, but yeah. But then, at one point, out of nowhere, someone arrives on Sakaar to confront and to take on Tony Stark, and that being Gamora. Yes, and Gamora being voiced by Cynthia K. McWilliams, who, as I recall, yes, like she previously voiced Gamora in Season 1, now she's back voicing Gamora in Season 2. So, Gamora, her presence on Sakaar, well, because, like I said, her confronting and coming face-to-face with Tony to bring in Tony and such after what happened in New York on Earth, where, yeah, Tony launching that missile on Thanos' army, the mothership. So, yeah. So Thanos has ordered Gamora to bring in Tony. But unfortunately, from Gamora and Tony, they're both captured by the Grandmaster. And now, they're his prisoners, obviously. And them being placed in this, like, what's the word? Like, unpleasant room, like, not a very suitable room for them, uncomfortable, yeah, because, it's like a love lounge room or something, and Tony wanted a separate room, and not to mention, they're not only sharing this room with each of them, the two of them, but they're also sharing it with Korg. But thankfully, it doesn't take too long for Tony to use what's on his chest to use it to get that piece off of his neck that, shocks Tony. He manages to take it off, and using his technology from his hand to open the doors and, well, making his way through the building, and having Korg come along with him, but except for Gamora. And when he would learn some more about Gamora and, her connection with Thanos and the fact that she is the daughter, but adoptive daughter of Thanos. So, yeah. So yeah, again, Tony and Korg, and just, yeah, like, the interactions between Korg and Tony are pretty funny, and yeah, not what you would expect, like, totally different, like, say, from the interactions of Korg and Thor. You see, just, and knowing Tony, of course. But yeah, them making their way and trying to escape, but, to speed things up because, well, yeah, the more that Tony learns about Gamora, and when knowing now that Gamora is the daughter of Thanos, and he just comes straight out on Gamora, confronting her about what her father has done, her daddy, destroying, responsible for the lives of innocent people on New York, Earth, and such, and, he was almost about to, like, strike at her, kill her or something. But then when the Grandmaster sends out a distress call that Tony and Korg have escaped, and the Grandmaster describing Tony as an unlikable person and so on, how the Grandmaster specifically puts at it. And when Tony was about to strike at Gamora, he stopped himself and when, hearing what the Grandmaster was saying about him. So Tony does spare Gamora. But at the same time, and as the episode proceeds, Tony tries to find a way to get Gamora to snap out of it, to choose the right side, what side that she should follow, like her daddy's side or her own path. So Tony and Korg, they escape on a ship. Gamora is captured once again. But then, Tony and Korg, they hire and bring in Valkyrie to help them out and such with what they're going to do. And, Tony managed to convince Valkyrie pretty good. And, Korg having his funny moments. Also, like, the audience, when watching the race tournament with the chariots, throwing some stuff at the racers, booing, like one point, because they throw live animals, like these chinchilla-like alien creatures, which is pretty funny. And Korg took one of them in as a pet and kind of naming him after his friend Jeffrey. So, but anyway, so they regroup. They bring in Valkyrie. They get her to join them with what they're going to do next, and then Tony building a new suit, but also managing to hack the systems to get the Grandmaster's attention, to challenge him to this race tournament. Yes. And whom wins? Like, if Tony wins, then he will claim the throne, take the Grandmaster's place. But if the Grandmaster wins, then, So, that sequence where they have this race, and, Tony, Korg, participating, as well as Gamora. She's forced to participate. Also, some of the other characters like that are in this episode, because, Topaz, who does make an appearance in this episode. And Topaz, once again, being played by, Rachel House. So she comes back to reprise the role of Topaz. Nice to see. And Topaz being Topaz, we know what she's like and the moments that she has, and when trying to go after and stop, like, say, Tony, Gamora, just, typical Topaz, as we know. But so the race happening, and even at a certain point, the Grandmaster finding ways to win, of course, cheating. So, knowing him. And, still, Tony trying to convince Gamora, but, even when, like, say, the race gets more intense, and Tony found a way to still be in the race when his vehicle is destroyed. The suit that he made, it can also turn into a race car. Yeah, awesome. But still, speed things up some, because eventually, when, like, say, at one point, Tony is in peril because the race is not looking too good for him, and not to mention more of those elephant-like creatures come in, and, obviously, the Grandmaster and Topaz, like, their attempt to stop Tony and not let him win the race, etc., and that goes for Korg, thankfully, and when Gamora seemed like, she was going to take down Tony in the race, definitely, while in the race, I should say, finally, she was convinced, and she snapped out of it thanks to Tony, to follow her path, her own path, and she didn't have to follow in her daddy's footsteps. She no longer had to be under his wing, and, so that's what happens, and Gamora helping out Tony, and in the end, they win, Valkyrie, Korg, and Tony, and Tony passes the Grandmaster rank to Valkyrie. He gives it to her, her being crowned the Grandmaster / King of Sakaar. So that was good on Tony. And that also puts Korg in that same position, too, where both Valkyrie and Korg taking over the throne and such, and hopefully making something good out of it. Unlike the Grandmaster. And the Grandmaster gets what he deserves, where he's, tasered and such, with those kind of devices, and he melts. And the Grandmaster, quoting the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm melting. Yeah, and good old Jeff Goldblum, because not disappointing yet again, being the Grandmaster. Yeah, he's Jeff Goldblum, and, you know, he was good in Ragnarok, and once again in this. Yeah. But yeah, so in the end, the Grandmaster's defeated. Valkyrie and Korg, they take the thrones of Sakaar, while Tony trying to make his way back to Earth. And not to mention that he did find out early on that everything was good on Earth. Thanos' army was defeated, Pepper was okay especially, and yeah, but, I mean, they didn't know that Tony was still alive out there, but thus, him trying to make his way back to Earth. Then Gamora, who boards the ship that Tony takes, well, yeah, I mean, she still is going to bring in Tony, but Tony's still convincing her, and yeah, he did, and once again doing so, and just still not to follow in her daddy's footsteps, and sure enough, when they make their way to where Thanos is, she betrays Thanos, rightfully so, killing him, and thus, you know, Gamora will do something better. Yeah, and probably so, join Tony back to Earth, and probably so, Gamora being a part of the Avengers. So yeah, and by the way, because Thanos, and he just gets like one or two lines, Josh Brolin, yeah, it's still amazing. It's still worth it, you know, to have Josh Brolin, of course, once again voice Thanos, even if it's just one line he has. So yeah, and also there is an end credit scene where the aftermath of the poor Grandmaster, where he's melted, but he's still alive, and asking Topaz to scoop him up, and just, golly. Yeah, that episode was pretty good. Episode 4, yeah. Episode 4, what if Iron Man crashed into the Grandmaster? That was a pretty good one, yeah. You know, with what it had to offer, and the fact that we have Tony making his way to Sakaar, and he's the first one, not Thor, to make his way to Sakaar. And knowing Tony, because how he would interact with some of the characters, very different than, say, Thor. Yeah, it's just great. Yeah. Okay, yeah, but just again, episode 4. What if Iron Man crashed into the Grandmaster? Not bad. That was a good one. I did enjoy it. Okay, so, next, episode 5. What if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper? Description / the story. Captain Carter's mission to save Steve Rogers sets her on a collision course with new enemies. Okay, so in this episode, we get the return of Captain Carter. Yes, and of course, Peggy Carter / Captain Carter, once again being played by Hayley Atwell. And, well, basically, with, you know, Captain Carter, instead of it being Steve Rogers / Captain America, whom, you know, years later being unfrosted and joining the Avengers, yeah, and not to mention that there's good chemistry between Captain Carter and Natasha Romanoff / the Black Widow. And at one point, because they discover and find a Hydra Stomper, and when it seems possible that inside this Hydra Stomper lies Steve Rogers, that he's been alive all this time, and the fact that it is mentioned that he did go missing at one point in 1953 and believed to have been captured and being used by, you know, stuffing him in these Hydra Stompers. And, you know, their first encounter with this Hydra Stomper that does have Steve Rogers in it, well, yeah, because the Hydra Stomper activating and trying to take down / kill Captain Carter and Natasha, but, you know, they managed to survive and, you know, technically defeat the Hydra Stomper, and the Hydra Stomper, you know, evacuating and disappearing, flying out. And then there's a briefing between, with Nick Fury, between Carter and Romanoff with Nick Fury, and Nick Fury, of course, once again being played by good old Samuel L. Jackson. So briefing that happens, and it kind of goes a bit out of hand because, yeah, it gets a bit intense, and the fact that Captain Carter would like to believe that Steve Rogers is still there. And even when Natasha deduces that, well, Steve Rogers, more than likely, and which, yeah, turns out to be true, that Steve Rogers was brainwashed, and the fact that, yeah, because he would be used by Hydra and be placed in a Hydra Stomper. And, well, for Carter, I mean, she's going to do whatever it takes to prove that Steve can come back, even though from, say, Romanoff and Fury telling her that Steve Rogers was dead in 1953, that the Steve Rogers that Peggy knew was gone, but Peggy refuses to believe so and wants to do whatever it takes to, get Steve to snap out of it. So then, what happens next, and to speed things up some, we do get the appearance of old man Bucky Barnes. Yeah, we get to see that, and Bucky Barnes, once again, Sebastian Stan. And, it's obvious because Sebastian's not doing like an old man voice or anything. He's using his actual voice, you know what I'm saying? Because he could have, if he wanted to, like maybe make his voice sound a bit old or something, but, that's okay. Still turned out good. Bucky, at one point, under the security of, Brock Rumlau, if I'm saying his last name right, yes, whom turned out to be a traitor and, following it in the orders of Hydra. And Brock, once again, being played by Frank Grillo. Brock and his troops coming in to protect Bucky, because at one point, yes, the Hydra Stomper is to be present and try to kill Bucky, but thankfully for Captain Carter and Natasha, they step in. And by the way, because Natasha / the Black Widow, once again being voiced by Lake Bell. And it's great to see that, for Lake Bell, not only that she got to, do a voice in something, straight from Marvel Studios, but the fact that she got to appear on screen as herself, as a new character, and that, of course, being in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. But the fact that she got killed, golly, so much for Lake Bell, but anyways. But yeah, at the same time, yeah, Lake Bell does a fantastic job, filling in the shoes for Scarlett Johansson. So yeah. The sequence where they're trying to take on and stop the Hydra Stomper, and especially that goes for Carter to, try to get, Steve to snap out of it under Hydra's control, even when, Bucky is informed that it is Steve Rogers in that Hydra Stomper suit. And, Bucky, at one point, he's risking his life to, get Steve to hear him, and that, they should go get drinks and such, because at one point when the Hydra Stomper has Bucky at gunpoint, and we have Natasha in a jet outside and is about to fire on the Hydra Stomper, I mean, Bucky ordering Natasha and so on not to fire, and the same goes for Brock, because, let him do this, even if there's a chance he does get killed, he's going to do whatever it takes. And he tries to do so. And it seems like he did. Maybe Steve did wake up, but no, sadly that didn't work. Not even for Bucky, but, Peggy stepping in, trying to stop Steve. And eventually, they managed to take down and knock out the Hydra Stomper, but in need of repairs. And, what happens next is, because, when Carter is flying with the Hydra Stomper trying to take the Hydra Stomper down, she does succeed, and, thankfully, they were both caught by Natasha in the jet. And Natasha has a suggestion where to go to fix up Steve and the Hydra Stomper, to wake him up. This secret location that nobody knows of in Scotland, where they can fix up Steve and the Hydra Stomper. So they try to do so. And, the more interactions and dialogue between Natasha and Captain Carter, really good. Really good. Just like say how, in the actual timeline of the MCU, with Steve and with Natasha, they had good chemistry. So it's great to see from that and this, where we have good chemistry between Natasha and Carter. So not to mention, because there are a few times where, and it's just like with Steve, where he has a lot to catch up, not to mention a whole lot of movies, because in this, a mentioning of RoboCop, Carter did not hear about that one. Even Carter made a reference of Carbonite, because when mentioning about, Steve and what to do with him, and the Hydra Stomper, and the mentioning of Carbonite, yes, a direct reference to Star Wars. So she had already seen Star Wars, and Natasha saying So that's what you do on your weekends. Well, obviously, yeah. So it's great to see that, Carter did get around to watching Star Wars, especially Empire. But then also, there was a mentioning of this earlier, and that being the Red Room. And basically, like, the Red Room, and yeah, a description. It's a training facility for Soviet spies, and it's depicted as a military base in Sokovia, designed to resemble a suburban American town. Right. So the Red Room was mentioned a little earlier. Then it was mentioned again, because this is where they can go to and they can end things and find a cure for Steve. And thankfully, Steve, he wakes up, and it is Steve. Like, he's right there. He's no longer under mind control for now, being the Hydra Stomper. And Steve Rogers / the Hydra Stomper, once again being voiced by, Josh Keaton. Yes, filling in for Chris Evans, and just like in episode 3. So, yeah, of season 2, and of course, the entirety of What If. You get the point. So yeah, thankfully, Steve, he wakes up, and not to mention that he sported a beard. Well, I mean, yeah, because the first time we saw Steve sport a beard was in Infinity War. Yeah, but Steve right here, and it's obvious that Steve, clearly, because Carter ended up being the first Avenger, and with the power of, with the strength and such, the serum, because Steve obviously is still being short and skinny, so yeah. But Steve knowing the location of the Red Room, so thus they make their way to the Red Room in Sokovia, and yeah, finding, as I said, as I brought up, where there's this base designed to resemble a suburban American town, and Carter's not wrong when she then mentions that it feels like that she's in a horror movie. Yeah, because, I mean, these figures that are in this suburban American town, because, yeah, they're like animatronics, kind of, but, they have voice boxes, but, they just smile. That's it. They're they're kind of pretty much like static figures, almost. I mean, their faces are static, but just, yeah. So, again, Carter's not wrong that it feels like a horror movie. So them, roaming around the suburban American town, and, even, say, when there is a nice moment between Steve and Carter while they're there. Yeah, because, a sweet romantic moment between Steve and Natasha. Not to mention, It's Been a Long Time is playing in the background. Oh, yeah. It's their song. Ugh, especially when it came to, because, yeah, I mean, and also keep in mind, because, I think even when we got Endgame, we kind of forgot about this, did we? Not unless if anybody, the hardcore Marvel fans would not forget this, where It's Been a Long Time was playing in, Winter Soldier, and then we would once again hear it in Endgame, but yeah. So it's nice to hear that, but all of that is interrupted with what Steve and Peggy are talking about when they are ambushed by drones, and then comes in Black Widow assassins, led by Melina. Yes, Melina, and once again being played by Rachel Weisz, yes. And, the fact that this Melina is evil, yeah. Her, being in charge of the Red Room and leading the Black Widow assassins, just, yeah. And, yeah, that sequence where, Black Widow, Natasha, that is, taking on the Black Widow assassins and Melina, while, Melina reactivates Steve Rogers, being brainwashed, and now Carter has to deal with taking on Steve again and trying to get him to snap out of it, that this is not him. Of course not. And, yeah, just the fights that go on, and when, yeah, even, say, dialogue from Melina and Natasha, Melina being disappointed in Natasha and the fact that she would then go on to be a part of the Avengers, yeah. But, Natasha not following in the footsteps of, where the Black Widow assassins were being taken, and that's good to see. Yeah, and because, again, Natasha taking on the Black Widow assassins, and there are a few times where she's not doing so good trying to take them on, but eventually she does succeed, and man, when it comes to her and Melina going at it, and at a certain point she's losing, to Melina. Man, just smacking the crap out of Natasha, while Carter trying to get Steve to snap out of it, and even when she puts her shield down, she's done fighting him, and, you know, trying her very best to get him to wake up, and that, you know, she needs him, and, you know, of course, that the fact that she loves him, and knowing that Steve wouldn't be doing this. He shouldn't. He needs to snap out of it. Thankfully, he does so, because what happens next, and to speed things up some still, Steve, he sacrifices himself, flying straight into the Red Room, and launching missiles, torpedoes, to destroy the Red Room. And when Natasha was, she was kind of losing to Melina, she uses her gun to, you know, fire, you know, a wire, and for it to be attached to the Hydra Stomper suit, and Melina being attached to it by her leg, and she goes with Steve being killed, and that was very fitting, and a good move on Natasha. In the end, Steve, he sacrifices himself, and Melina getting killed after being attached to the Hydra Stomper, and the Red Room is destroyed. And then the last part of the episode, well, Peggy believing that, you know, possibly Steve is still out there, and her attempt to try and find Steve. And, at one point, and while she's with Natasha, at one point, something on the ground, like a portal opens, and it takes Carter, and we then see Carter in this Renaissance world, you know, and, we out of nowhere see, because, man, the way this episode ends, like, where's this going? When, like, obviously it's going to be, we're going to see what happens later in season 2, but just, man, what's going on? Because, one of those things. Where in this Renaissance world, you know, Carter comes face to face with Nick Fury and Wanda Merlin. Yes. And Wanda, of course, and just for one line, but still, it was awesome. Elizabeth Olsen. And that's how the episode ends. Even the Watcher, who, and keep in mind, because, the Watcher at times popping up and, you know, doing a bit of narration, and, you know, he favors Captain Carter, and he's a bit surprised to see what just happened with Carter and where she went, but, So, this episode leaving off on, well, what we're gonna see later on in the season. What happens to Captain Carter, and what she's gonna do, and now that she's encountered, say, these variants of Nick Fury and Wanda. But, so, Episode 5, What If Captain Carter Fought the Hydra Stomper? That was another pretty good one, and as I mentioned earlier, because, this was probably my favorite of the next 3 episodes that I watched. No hard feelings on episodes 4 and 6. I'm just saying, episode 5 was another one of my favorites of season 2. It was really cool, because with what goes down in this episode, and with Captain Carter, and with her and Natasha, Steve Rogers, whom is alive in a Hydra Stomper, seeing old man Bucky Barnes, Rachel Weisz coming back as Melina, and whom is a villainess in this world, Melina. Everything that was going on in this episode was really awesome, Alright, now we come to the 6th and last episode for my Part 2 review of Season 2 of What If. Episode 6, What If Kahori Reshaped the World? Right. Okay, description / the story. A Mohawk woman ventures into the waters of the Forbidden Lake to help save her people. Alright, so in this episode, man, because this was pretty interesting, and the fact that, really had to follow this episode, the fact that all these characters, minus the Watcher, they're speaking in different language, and there's a lot of subtitles, but so basically, in this world, well, Asgard was destroyed by, well, Surtur, and Surtur only having like one line, because yeah, once again, being played by Clancy Brown. Voiced by Clancy Brown, I should say, because yeah, he had voiced the character in Ragnarok, so yeah, only did the voice, but yeah. So, again, Surtur destroyed Asgard, and Odin unfortunately not able to stop Surtur with the Tesseract. Yeah, it was too late. And the Tesseract making its way straight to a lake to pre-colonial America. Yeah, on Earth, obviously. And at a certain point, these tribes, they discover and interact with the Tesseract, and unfortunately, they disappear because of the Tesseract. And in the 15th century, well, these Mohawks, they know about this by this point and learn because, yeah, somewhere near their village is this lake that is referred to as the Forbidden Lake. And yeah, because the Tesseract had made its way to a lake, and yeah, the lake became magical and so on. And as I said, the tribe disappearing when they interacted with it, so yeah, and hence being called the Forbidden Lake. But yeah, these two Mohawk girls named Kahori and Wata. I hope I am pronouncing their names correctly, specifically, but yeah, again, you know me sometimes. Kahori being voiced by Devery Jacobs, and Wata being voiced by Kia Wentio. If I'm even pronouncing the name at all, I just, again, you know, but yeah. So at one point, they come across the Forbidden Lake, and, Kahori especially see no sign that there's nothing bad about the Forbidden Lake. You know, nothing's happening, and not to mention there's a few ducks in the lake. But all of that is interrupted when Spain conquistadors, they step in, invade the tribe's land, their village, and even when, yeah, they are in search of the Forbidden Lake, like, you know, they think it could be the Fountain of Youth and such, but not exactly. Unfortunately for Wata and Kahori, well, one of them does get captured, and they get noticed and captured, both of them, but thankfully for Kahori, she does survive. Only, you know, first, you know, she's shot by the shoulder, but making her way and falls into the magical lake, and, well, the magical lake being referred to as the Forbidden Lake, making her disappear, taking it with her. And where Kahori finds herself at this time, and through the Forbidden Lake as it's referred to, oh yeah. And, you know, even when it's discovered that, yeah, those missing tribes who interacted with it, they've been alive this whole time in a different world, I guess you could say, through, you know, the Tesseract that landed in the lake. So yeah, and to name some of the other characters, because the Spain soldiers, because we have most notably the main antagonist, Gonzalo, yes, being voiced by Gabriel Romero. Yeah, I know I've probably seen him before, and some other stuff, but yeah. So, you know, him interrogating those tribes and, you know, wanting to know where the Fountain of Youth is, and even when, a few of those soldiers who caught/captured Wata bring her to Gonzalo and forcing her to talk and, you know, knowing where the lake is and so on. Meanwhile, Kahori, where, she was taken, by the lake, and now finding herself in this entirely different world, this dimension where, she sees other fellow Mohawks, and one of them being Atarax, if I'm saying the name right, and Atarax being voiced by Jeremy White. Cool. So, the interactions between Kahora and Atarax, and what Kahori learns about this dimension, and the fact that, the tribes, these past Mohawks who are still alive, they were given this power when they interacted with the lake, and because it's the Tesseract, and the powers that they gained and being healed and so on. But the problem is, nobody has ever been able to find a way to leave this dimension and to make their way back to where they were, their home. And the same goes for Kahora, where a little bit through this episode, she feels that this is a prison. But the more time she spends with Atarex and the fellow Mohawks, and really getting the hang of the powers that she's given, and knowing her strength and how powerful she is, and even when she tries to attempt to leave, but then, when being with the other Mohawks some more, and even when she's, running and so on, she's starting to like it, and grow attached to this, and it doesn't feel like a prison anymore. Meanwhile, back where the tribes are, and where, the Spanish soldiers are, and being led by Gonzalo, well, they make their way and find the location where the lake is. Again, they believe it's the Fountain of Youth. Some of them entering in the water, but having to be taken by the lake and such. And Gonzalo thinking it's done, by the tribes, but of course it's not. And, well, seeing the Conquistadors, soldiers making their way to, this dimension, and locating and finding where the other Mohawks are. And they were about to, kill them and such. But thankfully, and when, because by that point where Kahori is, has gotten used and no longer sees this like a prison or anything, and and also thanks to Atarex, with the help of him, and assuring her, that it's all good and such, and the interactions that they have throughout this episode, she's really starting to like it even when they're having a celebration. But that being interrupted by the Conquistador soldiers, and thankfully, Kahori stepping in, taking on those soldiers, and eventually they manage to make their way back to the real world, and where the other Mohawks are. Even when Kahori, tries to get Atarex and the others to join, and, because the fact they've been, in this different world, this dimension, and, they should stand up and fight and so on, what she specifically says. And eventually they do, because, when it comes to Kahori and the others, all taking on the Conquistador soldiers, and when it comes to Gonzalo, in the end, they defeat them. And even when, Wata is safe and sound, and when Wata gets to meet and see what the other Mohawks are like, as well as Kahori, the powers that they've gained, and, something good. And the defeat of the Conquistador soldiers, as well as Gonzalo, where, it comes down to Gonzalo and Kahori. But, of course, Gonzalo loses, being killed instantly. Kind of like being crushed and such by Kahori with her powers. Then, at one point, this leads to Kahori and the other Mohawks to make their way to meet and encounter Queen Isabella of Spain. And the Queen being voiced by Coralina Ravassa, I think, I'm saying the full name right. And the Queen being very intimidating, and is just gonna stop at nothing to confront and take down those, and because no ships have come back, and of course being led by Gonzalo, they never came back. But sure enough, when, Kahori and the others step in with the powers they have, they opened a portal to make their way directly smack down, at her throne. They force the Queen to stop all of this. They're tired of her crap, and they just flat out want peace from the Queen. And she does in the end oblige, and that's what happens. Then at one point, Doctor Strange comes in. And Doctor Strange, besides the Watcher being the only character where, he does speak English, he steps in and recruits, you know what I'm trying to say. I can't place it, I'm having trouble saying it specifically, bringing in Kahori, knowing who she is and the powers that she has, and, well, obviously needing her help for something. And what a heck of a way to end off that episode where, we have Doctor Strange stepping in, and, because something, of course, is going to happen very later on in this season. And as I brought up earlier, but overall, that was a great way to end off that episode. But yeah, overall, Episode 6, What If Kahori Reshaped the World, was another pretty good one. You know, a new face that steps in, and yeah, this being a hero whom is a Mohawk. Yeah. Yeah, just, it was really good. Yeah, so, episodes 4, 5, and 6, they were really good. And again, one of my favorites of the three being episode 5, What If Captain Carter Fought the Hydra Stomper. But again, no hard feelings on episodes 4 and 6. They were good too, but yeah. What these 3 episodes in the middle of Season 2 had to offer with their storytelling and with what goes on with these characters, the different positions they're in, and, you know, with the chemistry with these characters, and, you know, the fact because in episode 4, we have Tony at Sakaar, and it's not Thor, his encounter with the Grand Master, but then when it comes to, say, Korg, Valkyrie, and then Gamora, awesome. And the fact that, yeah, in the end, managed to take down and defeat the Grand Master. And episode 5, where, yeah, we get more of Captain Carter, and she's in action with Natasha, and the fact that Steve, after all these years, was still alive, but under the mind control of Hydra, but in the end, he snapped out of it. Peggy was not giving up on him, and he made the sacrifice. And if he is still alive, but that's, of course, interrupted when Carter is taken into this Renaissance world, just, yeah. And in episode 6, a new face that steps in, Kahori, this Mohawk, soon to join the Avengers, yeah. And again, because she was, you know, her being brought in by Doctor Strange. With what goes on in Kahori's story, and with her fellow Mohawks, they take on the Spanish soldiers, the power that she gains, and because of the lake, you know, through the Tesseract, it's amazing, yeah. The 3 episodes, 4, 5, and 6, for Season 2, yeah, they were really good. Okay, so, what about you guys? What did you think of the next 3 episodes of Season 2? 4, 5, and 6. Which ones were your favorites? And what were some of your favorite moments from these 3 episodes, and with what goes on in these 3 episodes with their stories and the characters, and of course, most notably, a new face that steps in, Kahori. Yeah, and if any of you, obviously, before this episode, were familiar with the character herself, and yeah, did you get some, you know, some good laughs, and did you get a bit emotional? Because, yeah, I mean, because, you know, it is the MCU, never fails to bring us the hilarious and heart-wrenching moments, just, yeah. But, yeah, just overall, what do you think of the 3 episodes themselves? Episodes 4, 5, and 6. Again, which are your favorites, and with what I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of episodes 4, 5, and 6. What if Iron Man crashed into the Grand Master? What if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper? And what if Kahori reshaped the world? More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. And, well, part 3, it'll be on its way, and yep, it being the 3rd and final part of my review of Season 2 of Marvel Studios' What If. So yeah, stay tuned for that, where I review the last 3 episodes of Season 2, episodes 7, 8, and 9. Take care, peace out, and Avengers, assemble.